Hello, I'm going to discuss with you today the reason why we need training regarding trauma informed practices for the educators in our school district. Let's first talk about student trauma. Adverse childhood experiences, also known as ACEs, include domestic violence, parental separation or divorce, substance abuse or mental illness in the household, emotional, physical, or sexual abuse, and physical or emotional neglect. Um, since Folletti's study in 1988, this has been expanded to include being a refugee, experiencing war, or acts of terror. But in Folletti's study in 1998, 67% of the adults that he surveyed reported at least one ACE that occurred in their childhood. And almost 13% of adults reported experiencing four or more ACEs. Now, the reason why this relates to education is because ACEs are linked to increased risks in learning difficulties, behavioral problems and outbursts in school, and lower academic achievement overall. This is a little infogram. On the left, it shows adverse childhood experiences, abuse, household challenges, neglect. And it just shows you that approximately 67% of the population has at least one ACE that they have experienced. The right side of this infogram shows okay, if you look at the triangle that's on the bottom, it shows a lot of the physical effects of having experienced ACEs. And if you look at the top, it shows a lot of the medical effects of having experienced ACEs, including the mental health issues. So we have increased suicide attempts, more likely to develop depression, and then, of course, even early death is included. So this can cause a lot of anxiety, stress, panic, shame, PTSD, and grief for our students. At our school district in Adams 12, our district has to rely on self reporting in order to provide counseling and care for those students. What is really of concern is that we need to consider students who have not self reported, who have experienced ACEs. In our school district in 2020 alone, we lost five students to suicide over a period of 40 days. To me, this clearly shows that our students are dealing with trauma and they're not dealing with it very well. Let's talk about educator trauma. So, educators are at risk of experiencing secondary trauma or vicarious trauma. It can be intensified when an educator has trauma of their own that they've experienced in their lifetime, either through a retriggering of events in their memory or through reliving the same experiences or feelings. Many educators are not trained in the effects of secondary trauma. That was found in a study by Berger. And Loomis and Felt reported that of the educators who had received training in trauma informed care, less than half of them had received training in secondary trauma. However, it was reported that training in trauma informed practices can help mitigate the effects of secondary trauma. So I think we need to think about our educators in this process as well. So let's talk about the training. Trauma informed practices were developed by the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. It consists of four elements: realizing that trauma exists and realizing the effects of trauma, the effects that it can have on the brain and the body, recognizing the effects of trauma, sensitively responding to those effects, and a commitment to avoiding re traumatization. There are many frameworks and curricula out there that exist for training. Some of them do include the topic of secondary trauma or vicarious trauma, not all of them. Currently, in our school district, um, mental health counselors, mental health staff, and counselors are trained in trauma informed practices. However, this is not a mandatory training for educators. We do have training available for educators on a voluntary basis, but it's only offered once or twice a year, and it's not even advertised in the district. Teachers, however, have way more contact with students than mental health staff do, and they're often a student's first point of contact when they consider divulging traumatic experiences. Therefore, I believe that teachers really need to have training on trauma informed practices. Um, Teachers and mental health staff can experience the negative effects of secondary trauma when they learn of their students' traumatic backgrounds. So, my recommendation is that there is a mandatory training which involves both trauma informed practices and the effects of secondary trauma and strategies for staff members to be able to mitigate it. I think that would cover helping our students and helping our staff as well. The curricula I've picked out is called Trauma Informed Positive Education, also known as TYPE. It was created by Brenzel and colleagues. Um, it's proven effective for both students and teachers in multiple studies. And basically, TYPE is a review of the literature surrounding trauma informed care and of the literature surrounding student well being, which can also relate to teacher well being. Both students and teachers in multiple different studies showed increased self regulatory abilities, increased relational abilities, and an increase in their psychological resources. The 5 domains of type that we would need to teach our students. The first domain is called body, and basically it's strategies and interventions to help develop self regulation. The second one is on relationship, which is aimed at supporting teachers and forming strong and nurturing relationships with the goal of helping students heal and grow. The third one, stamina, is aimed more at supporting the students and helping them develop perseverance and stamina in the classroom. Engagement is the fourth domain, making sure that students are constantly interacting and that they're engaged. So, fostering their interest and their curiosity in the classroom. And then the fifth domain is about developing character and psychological strength, using the children's values and their own talents. So, how I propose we implement the action plan. I believe that we need to create a trauma informed team. Um, This team would take responsibility for implementing the training of type for all the educators in the district. I suggest that we need to include both educators and mental health staff. Um, we need to determine the team will need to determine which staff will become the type trainers for the district, which from here on out will be called master trainers. These trainers can either be part of the trauma informed team or can be other individuals who volunteer for the position or might work really well in training our educators. I predict we'll need approximately 15 trainers for the district. We do have 7 high schools, 8 middle schools, and 30 elementary schools in the district. So I'm thinking if we can divide up training amongst 15 trainers, that might be sufficient. We might need more. We do have approximately 1,850 teachers that will need to be trained. We do need to determine how to train the 15 master trainers. We will either need to decide to send them to training or to bring a type trainer into the district. But we probably need to work on um, the cost of that and make a decision for the board to approve from depending on the cost. We also need to determine the cost of the materials for training 1,800, almost 1,900 participants. Um, the type training in the 5 domains is recommended to be done in 4 whole day trainings. So after that, we need to determine which teacher in service dates in the next school year will be designated for type training for those teacher in service dates. And from there on, we need to determine the location of the trainings and the number of participants at each location. Submit costs and training plan to the district for approval. This is for final approval. We will implement the training across the 4 days during the course of the 23-24 school year. The team will be responsible for organizing the materials for the training, and the master trainers will be responsible for implementing the training. The trauma informed team should meet with the master trainers to discuss what worked and what did not work after all 4 days of training are complete and decide how to amend it if needed. And then we'll also discuss the protocol for training new employees in the future. Thank you.